I think it's wouldn't be a stretch to say that actually, this meeting has been worth it, even if we don't come up with any grand scheme that we're going to do together. It's been an incredibly rich and stimulating meeting. I very much doubt if anyone's not going to leave here with some way in which they're now going to work differently in what they're already doing. I think we've all really learned a lot, not least learned how many other interesting efforts and thoughts there are in this field. I don't want us to be complacent about that, but I think it would be unfair if we didn't point that out. And I really, I didn't have anything to do with organizing this or inviting you, so I want to congratulate the organizers for getting you all together and all of you for interrupting your lives. Now, let's see what else we can do apart from just, that stuff. It seems to me that, I'm going to put this as a hypothesis, that there is an appetite among most of us, maybe nearly all of us. There is an appetite to complement all of the fabulous, creative, messy, dynamic initiatives we're all doing at different scales on different topics. There's an appetite to complement that with some kind of system change enhancing, more coordinated effort that tries to connect these things in different ways and tries to give them a visibility at a different scale than perhaps we can achieve by what we've been doing currently in all of our different, fabulous efforts, many of which are not small scale themselves. I'm not trying to suggest that they're small scale, but they may be sectorial or whatever they are. So the question is there something, there is an appetite, I think, to see if we could find something that could be enhancing by being more system-wide and being more visible, having more consequence for decision makers, whether they be decision makers at government or multilateral levels or in business or civil society, etc. That's one of our questions. But while I think there's an appetite for that and probably a broad consensus around doing that, we haven't, of course, built any consensus about some of the details. And if I just remind us of some of these details, what is actually the purpose and strategy of this? What's the theory of change of this? Hasn't yet been addressed. I say strategies, not strategy, because I think one of the things we've heard several times here is that the food system will not be transformed by a single strategy. It's too complicated and too many dimensions for us to think that we're going to do one killer knockout punch and sort it out. Second thing we haven't yet talked about, resolved rather, we've talked about it a lot, is the question of the governance of such a process. We had, I think, very powerful and well-targeted set of remarks from civil society organizations that if they can be involved in the framing of the agenda, including the research agenda, and framing how the results are communicated, not only will this study probably be enriched than if it was sorted out if it had been framed from a more separate scientific agenda, but also it'll be much more effective at moving publics and various other social movements and political processes. So we heard that on the governance side. But we've heard also many other aspects of the governance question. Clearly there are many different and valuable schools of thought about how you might, how you measure externalities and how you do true cost accounting. And the approach here is not, of course, going to be trying to identify one of these and say it's the right one and all the others should be excluded or whatever. So we need some process of governance whereby some of the different rich intellectual traditions and practical traditions of doing this can somehow be part of an open wiki process of resolving it. So there's a bunch of governance questions out there. There's a bunch of funding questions out there. How are we going to generate and direct sufficient resources to do this effectively? As you've doubtless gathered, there's a bunch of foundations in the room here who obviously are anxious to, to deploy this in some kind of fashion. But, we foundations are very independent creatures. We're a little bit like snow leopards. We're not very good in packs. Nevertheless, we are talking at an unprecedented level around global agricultural questions, and we're obviously unable to commit, but very keen to indicate that we want to commit. And we'll be, of course, trying to look closely at this and see where we're at. We want, of course, both for this agenda to be owned by everybody, and we want it to be fit our criteria. So we're going to have to juggle with that as well, let's say, in relation to governance. And lastly, of course, we've got these questions of the geographic definition of this. Are we going to go for this mosaic approach or global approach or a series of countries, similarly on thematic issues? Although I think it's fair to say that most of us see the value, not just the value, beg your pardon, the necessity of making this an integrated assessment, because that very integration reveals dynamics we don't know. So this is where I think we're kind of at. Maybe some people here will not want to be part of this, and that I think it should absolutely be fine. Certainly this won't be an exclusionary effort that's designed to anoint some and exclude others from the process. It won't, of course, resolve or suppress the need for there to be many ways of looking at this question. We're still at a generative stage in this field. It would be very unwise to try to narrow everything down and say this is one way of doing an answer. We would hope this exercise would, in fact, open the opportunity for input. So that's my reading of the process we are now. How does everybody react? Pete, can someone do the mics?
Thank you. And thank you, Ken, for that charge. Pete Myers, Environmental Health Sciences. I can't imagine anyone sat through these 2 days and isn't ready to contemplate next steps. As you said, it's been incredibly powerful. But as we do that, I hope what I'm about to say is obvious. This is not a 3-year campaign. We're going up against some of the biggest obstacles in the world. And the foundations that are about to fund it and the organizations that are about to commit to working on it, they're going to have to face this not as a 3-year campaign, not as a 5-year campaign. This is at least a decadal campaign. And the first couple of years are going to should be spent, I think, in building the infrastructure that's capable of taking a large, integrated, but also somewhat Al-Qaeda-like organization forward. Because they're going to see some operations that shouldn't talk to one another, because we need to have the right people playing the right role at the right time, and sometimes no one can do everything. You've got to figure out who the right communicators are, who the right analysts are. So I just want people to understand the seriousness of the commitment, and hope that all of you are ready to join that. Thank you.
So let's slip in the word resilient for the other word that he suggested as the characteristic of this organization. Mike, do you still want to come in?
Mike Clark, RSPB. Can I just really respond on two of the trigger points you've just given us, one around the strategies and the other one around governance. First of all, just to make the point on strategies, we work within a multicultural partnership, BirdLife, across the world. And I think, the agenda we have here, whether it's the individual citizen or whether it's the global leader doing the right thing, this is about both utility, enlightened self-interest, but it's also about values. And I think we need to recognise that varies depending on where you're coming from. We have to think about how we make that case for utility and values in a way that will be variable across all the many environmental issues we've heard across the planet. So it has to be based, I think, on a diverse. There's got to be diversity in the approach, and that then takes me on to the second point about governance. My organisation plays a very active role within one of the largest civil society partnerships in the UK, which is called Stop Climate Chaos. It has over 100 civil society organisations, from trades unions through to major aid and development organisations like Oxfam, Tear Fund, Christian Aid, through to the Friends of the Earth, Greenpeace, RSPB, and the radical organisations like the Women's Institute. Now, the point I'm going to make about this is, how do you bring together a set of diverse organisations like that? And in fact, 2 years ago, we very nearly even built a bigger coalition with all of the development community, which was going to be around the food system is broken. And it failed, and we weren't able to corral and bring that all together because we were trying to have too rigid a structure. Where we are now, because we really regretted that we missed that opportunity, particularly with some of the MDG, SDG debate and the role that David Cameron had in all of staging that. Where we are now is recognising we need to get alignment of messages and framing. And I think in terms of one of the ways forward from today would be to think about how you get those common messages, those, in a sense, it's an orchestra that's, is allowed to have quite a lot of creativity, but there are some harmonies running through that we all share. And I think that, for me, is one of the areas we should be looking forward. If I think about some of the big coalitions of interest we work within, we need to have that alignment at that kind of level.
Every movement needs a theme tune, and ours will be jazz. At the back.
Hello, Ed Dowding from Food Trade. It seems that the innovation that we require is probably not going to come from within this room. And so therefore I would suggest that we use the might that is within this room to stimulate a XPrize style event, if anyone knows what XPrize is, or a competition that stimulates external innovation focused on a series of challenges that we define as being hard problems that we need to surmount in order to reach the destination that we would like to achieve. Thank you.
So I'm going to slip in one now, which Carlo Mango from the Cariplo Foundation had to dash to the airport. So I'm going to say in his words that he asked me to relay. The Cariplo Foundation is based in Milano. As you heard earlier, in 2015, early summer 2015, there'll be a major expo there. The essential theme is food systems alongside new energy systems. And he wanted to make sure that, this process is aware that this could be a very major platform for presenting an alternative set of approaches that would capture, global public imagination. That's what these expos are supposed to do. So they're playing a big role, central role in the organization of this, and he really wanted us to keep that in our agenda. And also to indicate, that they would very much want to be part of all the various kind of things that we're talking about now. So that's Carlo Mango's contribution now. Yes.
My name is Lee Marinoff. I would suggest, as Pete recommended, that we go on looking at this, but in the meantime, we develop a framework and we get some social media going around it, and maybe take 8 points around food, and it could be health, it could be energy, it could be education, sustainability, reforestation, whatever it is, and start to frame that out, start to put our story with that, and that we don't wait for 10 years, but that we put something up in the next month and try and appeal and start to get people to rally behind us.
It's also a way of learning what actually captures the public imagination. Yes. Or do you want to come in on that very point? Yes. What then? Sorry, just.
It's actually sort of to the food trade point too, but it would be cool, and I think I've heard this a couple times. It would be cool to maybe have a series of hackathons where we maybe in our different disciplines get people, economists, students, food people, agronomists, to look at actually developing true costs. So do like a hamburger hackathon where you say, let's get the true water cost of this hamburger and give it a price. Let's get the true soil cost of this hamburger, and actually get this out there into a sort of the crowdsourcing of the the economic data, because I think if you get more people involved in this, there's a lot of energy around this topic when you hit people in a participatory way. So I think that could be just a neat initiative that this group could probably do.
Super idea. Yes.
I'm Molly John, University of Wisconsin. To the point about a prize, a year ago this month, we laid on the U.S. President's desk a report on agricultural preparedness through the President's Council of Advisors in Science and Technology. I was on the writing team of that report, which has makes many points, one of which is the very serious need for innovation. The other is that as a research establishment, science establishment, the U.S. is not prepared for its agricultural future. And so we are running the first prize for innovation at a national scale focused on students, thanks to about a nearly $500,000 grant from the Buffett Foundation, meant to inspire students, undergraduate and graduate, to innovate in food systems as a whole, including accounting methodologies, connected to business plans. It is focused this year on U.S. institutions, but the hope through our development agency and others in our government is to inspire similar prizes around the world. We hope that will come next year. So please keep your eye on this idea, and we're certainly grateful for both the White House and the Buffett Foundation's recognition of that point.
Thank you, Molly. Yep. Now we let's also keep our this integration of the kind of the informational with the kind of what action steps can we do collectively. Yes.
Tristram Stewart again, trying to be a bit more concise this time. On the issue of TrueCost Accounting, and just from some conversations I've been having in the background, and I'm sure this isn't a new idea that people haven't got very much in their mind, but just to be aware, particularly in the way we talk about TrueCost Accounting, indeed in the way we have decided to name it TrueCost Accounting, to bear in mind that we are talking about playing a game with the system that puts a monetary value on everything. And that when we put a true cost on the forest or the services that it renders us, there is something beyond that as well, which is its value, and a value that indeed cannot be monetized. The value of a human life, the value of a species that will be extinct and never return, the value of a landscape even. And imagine the hypothetical scenario that, let's say, the bioengineers solve climate change, thus rendering the ecosystem services that a forest renders us to nil. An economist might turn around and say, oh, well, according to your own calculations, it now makes sense to chop down this forest and turn it into toilet paper. And then we're going to turn around and say, oh, no, we didn't mean it. We still don't want you to chop down the forest, because it's a forest and a habitat, and it's beautiful. Yeah. So just to keep in mind that our narrative has to include the meta values, the values that go beyond the game of putting a financial value on things that are in fact invaluable.
Yeah. So our power tool will always have these discontents, and we've got to really be clear about that. Nadia?
Yes. In the past 5 weeks, we organized in FAO an electronic forum on full cost accounting for food waste. We had almost 300 participants. The first week, which was about generalities, that the need for that, there was some participation. And as the weeks were going by with more specific valuation methods, it really turned the last week with 0 comments. What I'm trying to say is that it's a subject which is very difficult, and a lot of things have happened already in this room in the past few days. I would propose a bit along the line of what Pete was saying, that somebody takes the lead in trying to write down the infrastructure, what needs to be done based on what we've heard here, which is already a lot, and try to reach out, to who else, could be brought into the game, both in a content way and also in a process way, the governance of that thing, and perhaps convey another meeting in a year or so with all those parties which would have been identified to have a common agreement on what's the entry point, what's the storyline, and so forth. But I need it it needs to be prepared better, and we have had a lot of inputs, also going in all different directions, I would say, in the last few days.
Yeah.
And I think all this needs to be put together, and somebody has to take the lead on that.
Thank you. So we have Anne and we have Matt.
Ann Thrupp from the Berkeley Food Institute. I wanted to return to a conversation that happened earlier this morning about assessments, the challenges of doing an assessment that really has influence. And people refer to the ISTAD report as an area where it didn't have a lot of success in reaching audiences and having an impact. I think there are examples of reports and studies that have had more of an impact. But I just want to reflect on I participated in a National Academy of Science study 3 years ago that was an overall assessment of sustainable agriculture. It was called Towards the 21st Sustainable Agriculture in the 21st Century. And it was a very comprehensive, multidisciplinary. It included a human side, and it was funded by the Gates Foundation and the Kellogg Foundation. Unfortunately, that particular report was another one that had many policy recommendations, but it didn't have a communication plan. And I think I just wanted to encourage the organizers of whatever assessment is done to really do it very carefully so that it does have teeth, it does have implications that are not sort of academic. And related to that, I really think that it's going to be very important to include not only the negative side of what we're talking about. I think all of us realize there's a crisis. There are major problems that are internalized to production as well as externalized, and that I would really encourage utilizing, like I said, case studies of success stories and identifying what are drivers of change that are really fueling a positive movement forward, and building on those elements, but the policy aspects, the methodologies that are used to encourage positive step forwards. Because I think if you just dwell on the negative, it won't be as effective. So, thank you.
Joseph? Oh, no, Matt was first.
Hi, Matt Dunmore, Tudor Trust. I really enjoyed the last session, but I disagreed with a couple of points, and I'm trying to sort of recalibrate it because I don't want us to be left with feeling that's where we're at. I disagree with the concept of enlightened self-interest as a driver. Actually, I think that I think that where corporations get taken by surprise is where human beings actually feel empathy for each other. So the case of Millie Dowler was a really good example of people suddenly being tripped by something and a reaction coming that was very disproportionate from what was to be expected. So although I see enlightened self-interest, yes, of course, it's an important force, but if we're to look at what are the other triggers that are unknown or could be unusual, we need to look beyond that. And sorry, there was another thing. Yes, I also wanted to question the dismissal of inefficiency. I think that if we're going to measure the wrong things, we're going to come up with the wrong things being inefficient. And one of the things that I notice here is we haven't got a great deal of participation from people on the ground, people in Africa, wherever we're trying to help. We are in danger of choosing the wrong metrics and then judging them to be inefficient.
Yeah. Thank you, Matt.
Joris Lohman from Slow Food Youth Network and Slow Food International. I've been also, after being here for 2 years and 2 days, and the opportunity that we have with all this information and all these people that know so much about the things that are important, I think we need to start distributing these ideas and coming out. I mean, we're talking about more research, but I'm looking for some kind of an action plan, and I think that there could be a couple of easy points, maybe soil, TrueCost accounting, and waste, for instance, that we could find some kind of a agreement on with all the organizations that are present here today, and just start going out there and starting some kind of an online campaign, working up to, for instance, 2015. Milan Expo, because Slow Food International will be present there as well. With a half year, we will host a pavilion there. So I mean, combining these kinds of, and 1 year gives us a good time span, I think, to I mean, not to have all the answers within a year, but you know, trying to get our information about through the canals that we already have, and hosting a stage at the Milan Expo. So that will be my proposition, and I would like to, you know, partly take a lead in that.
Thank you. So I've seen 2 other hands right now, 3 other hands right now, 4. So then we'll pause, and then we'll come back to, all right, so what have we decided then? All right, and the closer you can get to that with your comments going forward, also very helpful. So where were we? Sorry, raise your hands again. Why don't you start with Pete, and we'll go, oh, no, they're sneaking in here. That's okay, go ahead.
Just while I've got the mic, I should say that we have been told by the House they are going to try and finish up quite on time, so we may not be able to overrun too much.
All right.
So all I would caution is that our words don't necessarily work with the larger world that we need to make this work well eventually. And if we move too fast, I'm all for moving fast as we can, but I want to move fast in a way that's informed by research that tells us what's the most effective way.
All right.
And it can be done rapidly.
Okay, now move the mic faster, Adrian.
Thank you. I think one important thing to take into account, and that's the decision, is about food and farming, because then we should take existing methods and apply them, and it's really about application. Or do we want to use food and farming as an entry point for TrueCost accounting in general, because that's not a system that already exists. And then you have to think very carefully about the developments that go on in the financial sector, in the chemical sector, in TrueCost accounting, and how you can tie that together, that you don't get islands working separately on the same theme. And I think that's a very important strategic decision. Is it about food and farming only, or is it about food and farming as an entry point for TrueCost accounting in general?
Okay, behind you to Ari. Sorry, yeah, sorry, you.
I was just actually going to mention about something practical that NGOs in Europe will be tackling in 2020 and between now and 2020, which is CAP reform. And I know it seems a bit parochial given what we've been talking about today, but it's a very real thing. We've had a terrible CAP reform this time, and this is a policy that puts 60 billion euros into farming every year for the next 7 years, and then there'll be another one. So it's an enormous...
Similar issue in the States with the Farm Bill. This is why it's a 10-year program. Mike, over here, behind you to the right.
Yeah, Tim Lang. Just to plug, 3 people have said the Expo 2015. There is a document on the table, sort of distantly endorsed by the Italian Prime Minister, called the Milan Protocol, that was launched in Milan 10 days ago. Have a look at it. Is that you could all rally around? I think it's open for discussion, so that's just a point of information. I think we have a problem, which is, well, we've got lots of problems, but we have a problem which is our basic message is we want food to get expensive. The entire civilization of the 20th century has been about food getting cheaper. And we are dealing with a very, very big opposition. It's almost everyone, actually. It is. I'm very hard about it. This is an urbanized world, and it's urbanizing it. People aren't thinking like that. The majority are like that. I think we have got to think bigger. I set my students to read a book called Thinking the Unthinkable, which was about how did the neoliberals take over the world. They were wrong and isolated by Richard Cockett. It's called Thinking the Unthinkable. Read it if you haven't. It's very good, because basically they kept on working up ideas, and then events struck, and that was their opportunity. I study policy. Let us be very clear, opportunism is very important. We might not do things at the right time in the right way. Many a change in policy has occurred for the wrong reasons through the garbage can theory of policy, which is ideas thrown into the garbage can, events change, and the minister says, or the chief executive says, I need some ideas, and they reach into the garbage can and say, Minister, why don't you do this?
So join our theory of change committee.
No, the point is this. We need to churn out ideas.
Yeah.
practical ideas that even if they don't work, when events change, they will.
Okay. All right. Thank you. But we're going to be they'll literally close this room soon. So last couple of desperate comments.
So Lawrence Couldrick from West Country Rivers Trust. I think I haven't been to these sorts of events before, and actually I feel quite inspired by a lot of the stuff that's been gone on. And some of the comments and some of the conversations we've had about Al-Qaeda and sort of a war on unsustainable food and sort of stirring things up. And I think this is a massive problem. This is a massive issue which we face, and we all do play a part. And I think showing innovation is great, and showing where there's going to be multiple benefits is great, but it is one that's a very slow process. And if that comes on the back of some real saber rattling and some real sort of throwing some threats around, I think there are going to be need to be some radicalized organizations that do stir things up and make some very bold statements that then can be backed up by innovation. But as the previous speaker said, or the person said, I think that we do face a massive opposition because we've got used to cheap, available food, and that's going to be the problem, having that mixture of both the sabre and the innovation.
Thank you, Lawrence. So here's why I'm sorry. I think you really, Mike, to the lady, Christina.
Thank you. Just for preventing that we are all leaving somehow depressed. So in Germany, we have at the moment a very strong agricultural campaign. And every year, since 4 years now, the 18th of January, there's a huge demonstration on a sustainable agricultural system in Germany. And it's attended by between 15 and 20,000 people. And it's -7 degrees, everybody's freezing, but everybody comes back every year because we want our government to listen to us. You know, and it's really, I mean, it is a very strong coalition between consumers, between farmers, between animal rights organizations, between very, very young food movements from the cities. And so I think we have a strong opposition, but we do have a lot of force as well. So if you want to come to Germany, I invite you.
We'll come in summer. All right, so this is my reading, and I'm going to call on you, Patrick, to make some closing remarks in case you think you're going to get away with it. So here's what I've heard. I didn't hear anybody disagreeing with the basic kind of straw person that I laid out in the beginning. What I heard was that people pointing out that approach mustn't be too unitary. It's got to be very diverse. It's got to have diverse governance, wider voices. There's got to be enough creativity in there, open-ended creativity. We've got to be realistic about the ways in which the different forces for change actually operate and make available, perhaps not wait until the end of our process to start engaging with the public, but get lots of ideas out there, start testing them with the public right now. This is the kind of thing that I heard. Is that sort of right, or everyone was being polite, saying that they, forget the whole thing, we're doing great as we are, or some other statement? No. All right, super. Thank you. That's quite not bad, actually. Maybe you're just tired. Patrick. And then somebody should tell us at what point they are going to send in their fire wardens, bailiffs, and other people. This is a church institution. We'll have a number of them, so be careful.
It's going to be difficult for me to just close it, because it just feels as if it's just begun to open something up. And also, we are going to go on to the Garden Museum, and then we've got tomorrow. But maybe this is just some pausing remarks. And I did want to share some thoughts about some possible actions which could be collaborative. I mean, what strikes me about how we take this forward in terms of initiatives is that Ken's mentioned a sort of wiki approach, and you could argue that the food movement, if that's what you can call it, all the various organizations, and I mean, an amazing collection of people and organizations that are represented here, they will all do things, and it's rather like the sort of biodiversity of the rainforest. Every right action is a good action, but I do think that there are some kind of what you might call unifying principles around the cellular approach, which is just one of the inspiring themes that came up in this, I thought, brilliant conversation that we had earlier, which is that they do, you know, if the food system's like a vast organism, if you get healthy cells, then the food system as a whole will be healthy, which means you can apply the change from the ground up at the local level. So I'm saying that one thing that the Sustainable Food Trust would like to do will be to set up a sort of, I don't know what you call it, theory of change working group. You know, one working group, not a, you know, just a group of people who would like to come together around looking at some of the challenges which unify all of us, or most of us maybe, in relation to what the key characteristics of sustainable food systems might look like. And in relation to the CAP thing and the Farm Bill thing, which I think is also very important in terms of enabling policy climate, because after all, there are such huge obstacles to what we would like to see happen now. We would certainly like to work with other organizations in organizing meetings, possibly in Washington, D.C., to look at the Farm Bill, but also in Brussels to try to influence the next round of CAP reform, working with others. So those are just two things that we want to do. But I would just like to say one more thing about the impact that the last 2 days has had on me. And in the end, it's personal, isn't it? I've found this discussion so incredibly inspiring and informative, and I feel as if I've learned so much, and so many times I've been sort of on the edge of my seat, drinking in new information. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm happy, and I just hope that you feel a little bit the same. I would like to close by reminding you that you need to be over at the Garden Museum by, let's get this right, where is Claire? I think 7:15 at the latest, but it would be nice if you arrived a bit, 7 at the latest, yeah, because there are some words said, and then we're going to have the Bach concert, recital, which is worth coming for at 7:30 before the food is served. So try to get over there. But in the meantime, I'm not going to mention all the people that I mentioned at the top of the meeting, but I can't not mention the Moore Foundation and the Gates Foundation and the Owsley Brown Foundation and family, and the V.K. Rasmussen Foundation, and the broader foundations community, without whom this last 2 days and tomorrow wouldn't have been possible, and all the NGOs that have come behind this event and have supported it as well. It just moves me that there's been such a collaborative spirit about this, so thank you all very, very, very much. And let's go on and hope that we can maintain this incredible energy which has characterized the last 2 days as we go through till tomorrow. So, onwards. And thank you for being part of it.
So I'm sure we all want to thank the Sustainable Food Trust, the whole team who've looked after us so well. Our artist is unbelievable. Today, we had to add a whole nother panel today, was so productive. I don't know if you've noticed. That's our first social media product right there. And then remember, of course, tomorrow is at the Royal Geographic Society. It's not here. Don't turn up here still slightly jet-lagged, wondering where your coffee is.